the tie-dyed spider. The air in the Irish bog was the color of weak tea, heavy with the smell of wet moss and decay. Alec, a man who traded in high-end cannabis strains but harbored a frustrated chemist's ambition, knelt in the reddish-brown earth. He wasn't looking for Pete. He was looking for a new high, an organic alchemy that would eclipse anything from his pot shop. He was currently studying an innocuous grass snake, a species common to the area, that was exhibiting a frantic, twitching sickness. He thought venom, but it was a harmless species. It wasn't until he saw the small, impossibly neat puncture hole in the snake's flank that he understood. He tossed the snake away in disgust, and a mottled speck of color, a creature of dull green, red, and white, crawled from the wound. It was a spider unlike anything he'd ever seen. Its carapace looked like spilled watercolor, a subdued, tie-dyed pattern. He stared at it, fascinated, but the spell broke when he felt a sudden tickle on his calf. He instinctively swatted a smaller, more vibrantly colored male that had run up his boot. The spider didn't fall. Instead, it clung to the back of his hand, its pincers sinking in for a fraction of a second before he shook it off. There was no pain, only a spreading, confusing warmth. One moment, Alec was standing in the cold, gray bog. The next, the world exploded into color. It wasn't hallucination, it was clarity. Every moss spore, every dewdrop on the black surface of the peat pool, fractured into impossible, vibrating rainbows. The colors of the spider, which he could still see twitching on the ground, were dull in comparison to the electric, pulsing reality around him. A wave of euphoria washed through him, so tender it felt like a lover's touch just beneath the skin. Every anxious thought, every regret about leaving his job, every failed experiment, melted into a radiant, weightless zero. It was the purest, most concentrated joy he had ever known, a perfect 45-minute existence. Then the crash. It wasn't a dizzying fall, it was a physical, emotional plummet into a dull, agonizing sobriety. The colors drained, the warmth fled, and the bog was just cold, gray mud again. Alec stood up, forgetting the snake, forgetting his research. He focused entirely on the small, twitching spider on the ground. He had to have that feeling again. He spent the next 3 days in a desperate frenzy. He caught the male spider in a glass jar. He tried to milk venom onto a slide. He analyzed the gossamer web, looking for trace alkaloids. He tried to synthesize the compound using his crude field chemistry kit. Nothing. He even chewed the spider's silk, gaining only a bitter taste and a throbbing headache. The venom required the immediate, direct contact of the bite. By the 4th day, the need had become a consuming ache. Alec lifted the jar, looking at the male, which still possessed that impossible, kaleidoscopic coloring. He tipped the spider onto his forearm, and with a barely trembling hand pinned it lightly, applying just enough pressure to irritate it. It bit, a mere pinprick. The colors rushed back, blinding him with their beautiful, chaotic power. The high lasted 45 minutes exactly. As it began to ebb, Alec felt the familiar descent into desperate sobriety. He was still staring at the male spider, which was now strangely sedentary, perched right on the edge of the bite mark, refusing to move. And then he saw her. She emerged from the damp peat nearby, a duller, larger version of the species, the female. She moved with unnerving speed, a determined shadow against the brown earth, running straight toward him. He realized the male wasn't just sitting there, it was a living beacon, the bite mark a target, a signpost for the females. It was how they mated. The male created the entry point, and the female rushed to take advantage. He caught her, scooping her into a second jar just as she was about to climb his leg. He looked at the male on his arm, and a terrifying thought took hold. Why not? In his euphoric state, he released the female onto his arm, guiding her to the open wound. The male shuffled aside, still clinging to the old hole. The female didn't need prompting. She sank her dull pincers into his flesh. There was no pain, only that incredible rush of tender, ticklish warmth, so confusing and powerful that he smiled as he watched her work. She began to burrow. He felt the digging, but the euphoria turned the horrific violation into an exquisite massage. 45 minutes later, the colors went out. The panic, the sheer, paralyzing horror, hit him instantly. He looked at his arm and she was gone. A tiny reddish stain where she'd entered, leaving only a tiny tunnel she was now spinning shut from the inside, a cocoon for her eggs. The tension, the fear, the sudden, terrible reality of the life cycle she had begun inside him, it was too much to bear. The male, sensing the rising internal alarm of its host, bit again. Instant, perfect relief. The female continued her work, tunneling deeper, weaving sticky threads of silk within his flesh, preparing her nurseries. Over the next 2 days this became Alec's ritual. He was a human alarm clock for his own euphoric consumption. The female burrowed and fed, the male kept him comfortable. The male grew weaker with every bite. Alec realized that the male's venom wasn't just poison, it was a complex cocktail, and the spider was using up its very life force to administer it. Its own blood, the adhesive web it secreted, and the potent compounds in its pincers. All were needed to make the poison whole, to create the perfect high. Without all three the venom would not process. On the 3rd day the male died, its tiny vibrant body shriveled and empty. Alec wept, not for the spider but for the lost supply. He was covered in the tight, sticky silk the female was pushing out of the wound as she wove her internal architecture. On the 7th day a local police officer and a man from the pot shop found him. He was seated in the corner of his remote rental cabin, upright in a chair, his body wrapped from the chest down in a thick, dense mat of reddish-brown silk, like a grotesque cocoon. His skin, though pale, wasn't desiccated. The spiders had kept him perfectly hydrated, a living nursery for 6 full days. The officer, seeing the glazed, empty eyes, reached out to check the neck for a pulse. As the body was touched, Alec's mummified face slumped forward. His jaw dropped open with a silent, sickening click and thousands of tiny, newly hatched tie-dyed spiderlings poured out of his mouth in a living, shimmering cascade. The end.